expressed.
Hello, welcome to the next workshop, and it's going to be called Doggy and Kitty Phantagrams. It's being performed by Barry Rothstein. Barry's known to be the Phantagram guy. He saw his first phantagrams at the 2004 NSA convention in Portland, Oregon. Steve Hughes exhibited a couple and provided the NSA's first phantagram workshop. Terry Wilson showed and sold her fine line of phantagram note cards, beautiful flower images, and a mushroom phantagram that Barry bought. Barry fell in love with 3D. He's especially fascinated by phantagrams. And if you're not sure what a phantagram is, Barry's going to explain it and show you how he makes them. As soon as I share a screen here, be on our way.
Hi, I'm Barry Rothstein, and in our 3D microcosm, I'm known mostly for my photographic phantagrams. To date, I've produced thousands of phantagrams, including 6 books of them. A phantagram is much like a traditional 3D image, but it goes a step farther in its attempt to imitate actual human vision. The main difference between a traditional 3D image and a phantagram is the way the images are cropped to reverse out the effects of perspective. And I've found this difference to be magical because they seem real. At a given point of view and using a precisely defined stereo window, I work to give your eyes almost exactly what I see when I shoot. Another difference is that a phantagram is most typically shot and viewed from an angle and not straight on. So when you look at them straight on, you're not getting all of the intended effect. If you're viewing this workshop on a tablet or cell phone, when viewing the final images, lay the tablet flat onto a surface and view it from back at an angle. From that point of view, the images should appear lifelike. This workshop is a quick guide to show you how to make phantagrams of a pet or child. To do this, you'll need a stereo camera or a well-synchronized pair of cameras. And you'll want to find a rectangular reference frame to serve as your target grid for the left and right eye shots. I'd suggest indoor or outdoor floor tiles or sidewalk or pretty much any measurable rectangle on the ground. For this illustration, I have shots of Caden, the son of friends, and Casey, my neighbor Ken's dog. For my target grids, I used sections of sidewalk. They were shot with a Fuji W3. Using a tripod is a good approach, allowing you to get better centered and lined up. But for the sake of simplicity, you can do it handheld. Just try to get well centered. The shots I'll be showing you were, in fact, done handheld. I'll work a couple of these images into phantagrams using alternately Photoshop and Stereo Photo Maker. So let's take a look now at some of these shots. Here's KC. I'll expand the window a bit. And these are in a cross view format. Sorry if you can't cross eye view. I tend to use it a lot. Now this one we won't be able to use because you notice that her ear kind of falls over on one side and her whole face on another. So I can't use the line from that. And this one, her ear kind of crosses over a little bit. But I've got a few good shots there that I could do with KC. And then here's Caden. Here's a second shot, the only difference being that I took that cyan object that he's holding and changed the color a little bit so it'll show a little better in anaglyph. Here's another shot of Caden. So let's start out. We'll start in Stereo Photo Maker. excuse me, we'll start in Photoshop. Let's see, I think this is the shot that I wanted to do. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so open with Photoshop. Okay, maximize it a bit. And what I'm going to do first off is I'm going to duplicate the image. I need to work on both the right eye shot and the left eye shot independently. So coming here, I'll use this cropping tool. See right there. And I'll work on the left eye shot first, which is on the right side. When you select an area, then you'll see a dialog box pop up here, including the perspective. That perspective needs to be turned on or checked. If not, then you can't move these lines independently. So be sure you check the perspective box. Once you've done that, then you can move these nodes independently. I'm not sure if node is the right word, but it'll do for the moment. So I go roughly about where it's going to go. Now I'm going to zoom in. That's done by hitting Control plus some number of times. I'm going to do I usually work at around 200% when I do this. All right, so do one corner, using the lines of the sidewalk as a target grid. There's my second corner. Doesn't really matter what order that you do them in, probably good to be consistent. There's a third. And there's the fourth one. So if we take a look, instead of seeing a rectangle, what we see is a trapezoid. I measured, and this is a 28-inch by 53-inch sidewalk tile. So I hit the enter. I'm going to say image size. I want the constrained proportions box unchecked because I want to put in specifically what I want here. So it's 28 by 53. All right, take that. Let's move it over here for the moment. I guess I could zoom it up. Not super high res shots, but they'll do for illustration purposes. Now I'll come over and do the same thing on the right eye shot. Slide that over, and this one. Zoom in, Control plus. I'll start the same place I started last time. Again, it's not critical, but you just kind of get into a habit, and it's good to have habits when you do these things. Okay, there's one. 2, 3.
Surprisingly, I'm finding the laptop is ahead.
That's 4.
iPad.
That time it made it very elongated. Image size 28, 53. And if you can cross-eye view, then you can see there is KC, and that's a phantogram. Next, what I'll do typically here is I'll image and do canvas size and double the canvas size, the width to 56. I say I want to start on that side or keep that there. And drag this one in. And now I've got a cross-eyed pair of KC. I'm just pulling down some guidelines to aid in cropping. So I will now select that area. I'm gonna flatten the image, image crop. Okay. Last thing I'll do for those of you who would like to see this as an anaglyph, I will see if I move this out of the way. Channels, I'm only going to work in red. This is a pretty simple technique Ray Zone showed me once upon a time, where I'll take the red channel of the left eye shot, ultimately cover up the red channel of the right eye shot, image, crop, and there's my anaglyph. I can try and improve on it a little bit with maybe a levels, and good enough for now. So now you can see an anaglyph of KC. All right, now let's try Caden, and we'll use, to do Caden, we'll use Stereo Photo Maker. So I'm going to come over here, I'll choose this file, open with Stereo Photo Maker, and let's take you and expand you to the full window. Okay, so in Stereo Photo Maker, if you take a look up here under Adjust, you'll see Easy Create pop-up anaglyph. Well, in fact, a phantogram doesn't have to be shown as an anaglyph, but Alt-F is the functional command to do this. You'll see there. So for one, I'm going to zoom way in. I'm doing that with the wheel on my mouse, and I want to get to where I can see the corners well. I hit Alt-F, and this happens. I end up getting this. So I'm going to go to one corner, and I'm going to the other side and do the corner there. I'm going to drag it over. You need to either do these either in a clockwise or counterclockwise approach. And it doesn't really matter if you do left, right, or right, left, or whatever. Another Alt-F, and okay, I'm going to drag up to my third corner. Another Alt-F. In this case, I'll do this one first. It really doesn't matter. And then let's go for the fourth corner. Alt-F. Okay, when you do the last one, this is what you get. And in his case, the size of this is 36 inches by 72 inches, these sidewalk tiles. So I'll tell it apply, I'll tell it okay, and I'll say view, fit to window, I'll zoom in some, and then what I'm going to do is this. I'll use the free cropping tool. And there we have a phantogram of Caden. And what I'll do next is I'll reverse, I'll swap the right and left. I'll say I want to have a color anaglyph, and there you have it. So here's a color anaglyph of Hayden here. Here is one of KC over here. And that's pretty much how I go about making these. Next, we'll go to a Q&A.
About to go live.
All right, Barry should be around now for some questions and answers.
Hello.
Any
Got
questions?
73 people here, so there should be some questions, comments. Must be somebody out there that's new to Fantagrams.
Oh, Wilson has a question.
Okay. Hey, Carl.
Hey,
Go ahead,
Barry.
Carl.
How you doing? Good to
Good,
see
how
you,
are you?
Carl.
I occasionally see people that post Fantagrams online, and they're not necessarily, maybe there was a grid around them to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
but I like I'll see like a dog and it's sitting in the grass or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a more, I don't know, is there a way to just sort of eyeball it, I guess?
Yes, I do that all the time. And if this was a longer format, I'd be, I could show you doing it. I've shown it at NSAs before. I'm trying to show you when you're using that rectangle, where you've got a rectangular reference frame, reference frames to work with. That's a fairly simple way to do it. Once you get good at it, I do it all the time. I take just point and shoots with my W3 camera or with other cameras of a dog sitting there. Most of the time you can't go run and grab a quick rectangle to put around them if you're in the grass. So once you get familiar with the trapezoids, the left and right trapezoids that the rectangles kind of turn into, then I can line up and just kind of, work on, matching up blades of grass pretty much. So I do it. It's just that it would be difficult to do in a short format like this, where the whole workshop was half an hour.
No, I understand. But and I guess my follow-up question to that would be, if you're sort of, if you're doing it just freestyling it, does the same apply to the measurements for the trapezoid? Like at the end, are you just kind of like,
Generally speaking, when it comes to the measurement, I mean, I'm familiar. It's when I do when I do a shot of a dog, and maybe I could bring one up real quickly on screen. Let me just find one that was fairly recent, along the lines of what you're talking about. I'll screen share as soon as I've got something loaded on my laptop. Let's see. Current. Here is.
take you outside the
Yeah, it's.
of the workshop, but
In fact, here is one. Here's a shot here. Let me try to go to screen share real quick. And share, okay. And here's one that I did that way. Let me find you the original that it came from. It should be kind of hard to work sometimes when I'm in this. Let's see. I'll tell you what, here's.
it looked like it was in the top row, a DSC 1740. If you scroll back up.
Not finding straight off that one, but here, let me just pull up a shot. And I'll show you kind of real quickly how I might lay this out. This is a wolf dog. You might have seen, again, this is a cross view. What I'll do is this, I use guidelines that I'll pull down. So I'll first do this. And let's see. Don't want to lose too much of the tail. This is an approximation of what it looks like. If you consider these, what I would call alleys, like from here to here, and then from here to here on my, let's see, so this is a right-left shot. On my right eye shot, this alley is going to be narrower than here. Now, what I tend to do is I cross my eyes, I drag along, I drag and try and approximate. There's one, there's two, where I'm crossing my eyes and dragging guidelines.
All right.
There's three, and here's a fourth one. And what you find, it's not bad. I'm sure when I get closer, what you find typically is that, you know, this is going to be wide, fairly wide. This is going to be, you know, kind of matching in width. These are going to be narrower. Now, again, that's cross view. If you're doing it with parallel view, it'll be the opposite, which ones. But so you get kind of familiar with how they come out. And so this is, you know, basic. Then what I would tend to do from there is I duplicate the image and then blow them up and line up and match up with blades of grass, so that I'll usually work with my right eye, the right eye shot, and then adjust the left eye shot to zoom way in. Usually, again, work at about 200% and put these two next to each other. So yeah, this is most of the way I do when I'm doing dog shots, but trying to show how you can do your dogs and kids at home. Whoops.
Yeah.
Let's back it up here. So what I'll just do is try and match up those corners. In the right and the left eye shots. So, for instance, here, I'll try and pull this guy down. That kind of matches here. You can see that you look for little dots, little like this little dot here is kind of tell me where it is. This is pretty good here. And then what I'll do is I'll come over and grab a shape, a rectangular shape, and I'll mark my spot here so that I've got it. Then I'll kind of slide way over to the other side. So that's how I would tend to do it. Again, I'm going to be probably running out of time any second. But what I tend to do is then I'll match up those four corners so as to be able to do it with, let's see, am I there? There pretty much. Am I over here? Yeah, there it is. So then I'll kind of take and vertically, I need to kind of match up. That's going to be about there. So I'll slide down and slide this one over here. And that will give me about where it should be. And I'll come over and put a little marker there. Later on, I'll get rid of those, but this marks the spot for me. So that's pretty much how I tend to do it.
Appreciate it, Barry.
Sure. Yeah. It's, you know, once you get used to doing these, you're familiar with how that trapezoid should look. I'll stop sharing now on here. And you go back to this, but that it's a fair, you know, it takes a little time. It's not too bad. Usually I can knock one of those out in about 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. And, you know, I do a lot of dog shots. I've shot pretty much just hundreds of dogs and many, you know, almost all the neighborhood dogs. And, you know, everybody likes seeing their own dog shot that way. So when I don't have those lines, you know, you just kind of get, you know, but it takes a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of experience to make that work.
Barry, somebody asked a question. Do you
Yes.
think Photoshop gives better results than Stereo Photo Maker?
No, I'd say they're both equivalent. I think that it's a little more intuitive working in Photoshop, but I like the interface in Stereo Photo Maker there. That said, usually I'll use Photoshop, but not everybody has Photoshop or a version of it that'll work. The Stereo Photo Maker approach is just fine. I don't think that one is superior to the other as far as the quality that it's going to come out.
Mute. Oh,
What?
mute. Okay,
Barry, I had a
Yes.
question. Have
Yes.
you ever tried to, shoot like animals on a tile floor? And use that as reference instead of
And that's
your,
exactly what
frames?
yes, Paul, that's exactly what I'm recommending in this workshop is sidewalks, tile floor, patio tiles or whatever, any kind of a rectangle that you've got that's, in your backyard or wherever. Sidewalk works when, for other places, but definitely those, you could even just grab, if you've got a box or something like that, you could lay a box down. I did a cat phantogram not too long ago that was just sitting on a pretty natural rectangle. It was made of this corrugated cardboard and whatever else, and it works great. It's a good question, and thank you. Yeah.
we got time for one more question if somebody wants to ask.
Yeah, what about camera to subject distance? Is there an optimum distance you should be?
I would tend to play around. I've been shooting, I shoot mostly with a W3 camera. I try and get to where, I'll try and just get to where it looks like a good shot, kind of zoom in to whatever degree. Sometimes, again, if you're doing dogs and kids, it can be really challenging. Mainly just try and make good use of the space on the camera. Try and get it to where it looks right to you, where it looks good. I can't say that I have an optimal distance. I just try to zoom in enough to where I'm using just about all of the camera as much as possible.
Okay, what about the angle of view on the camera? Do you try to get like a 45-degree or?
I don't. Some people do. Some people, I know Owen Western always does 30 degrees, and he's very, very much more precise than I ever am with these. But in the meantime, I look for a good shot or what I can get. Oftentimes with dogs and kids, it could be really challenging, and you kind of take what you can. It's good to use a tripod if you can when you're lining things up. And then, it just takes, one less, problem, one less thing to go wrong. And you could be nicely centered on that rectangle. I don't really have I'd say I usually shoot from 30 to 60 degrees. I don't really try for 45. I just look for a shot that I like.
All right, I guess we're about out of time now. And thank you very much, Barry. Very enlightening.
Thank you for attending.
Okay, our next workshop is going to be performed by Jim Swallow. It's called Burning and Dodging in Photoshop to Enhance Your 3D Vision. So Jim Swallow is a professional photographer in St. Petersburg, Florida, with over 40 years of professional experience. He's been creating stereo images for the past 12 years, and more seriously for the past 4 years. Jim has worked in Photoshop for the past 25 years. The techniques he will share are simple and easy and can turn an ordinary image into a more interesting image in mere minutes. Creating a compelling 3D photograph is about having elements in the foreground, midground, and background. It is also about light and shadow. Jim is going to show you how to add light and shadow to images to aid in the 3D experience. Jim, are you going to perform this live or are we playing the?
I can do it live. Yeah.
All right. And you'd share your screen.
All right. Let me just move things around here. Share screen. Host has disabled screen sharing. You have to enable it. Rick, it's not enabled on my screen.
All right, it should be enabled now.
Still says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Dave, make him a co-host.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, there we go. Share. Okay, well, I wanted to give you a basic idea of my workflow. Let me move this one screen out of the way here. My basic workflow is I start off with my stereo images. I align them in Stereo Photo Maker. Then I put them back into Lightroom. I just color, contrast, etc. You know, I do all the basic color adjustments before I move them into Photoshop. This particular image here was on the cover of Stereo World magazine, so I thought I would use that one to start with. And my first step is I have both, I look at them both on my screen, then I will open them up in Photoshop. Okay, so we have them in Photoshop, and I will work on the left image first, and then move things over to the right image. So my first step is to create a burn and dodge layer. Oh, by the way, all the instructions are in a printout that I gave to make it easier to follow along, because it moves pretty fast. So it'll be easier for you to read the little PDF that's there. I'm going to start off with a new blank layer. I'm going to change the blend mode to overlay and fill it with 50% gray. Edit, fill, 50% gray. I do that because I want to be able to see my corrections. If I turn off my two layers, you'll see I have a gray screen. It's neutral, it's 50% neutral. So the first step we have to do is we have to zoom in. We're going to set, in this particular image, there's two planes going on. And I noticed that you can't make a perfect alignment with one space. So I will have two target points. First one, and I'm going to label my layer, let's see, right. I'm going to duplicate my burn and dodge layer and call it left. Okay, so on the left burn and dodge layer, I'm going to pick a target point with my brush. So I have my brush selected, and let's get a small brush because it's pretty big. At 100% opacity, let's zoom in so you can actually see the target. I'm going to set a target point easily in a spot where I can find it. So if I set my default colors to black and white, at 100%, make sure my brush is hard. I'm going to set a left target point on my left burn and dodge layer. And then I'm going to move over here. I'm going to change to my right burn and dodge layer and set another target point on this side. And this helps us to align the two images when we move them over into the right image. So if we start off with our right burn and dodge layer, I want to look at areas of my image that I want to draw attention to. So in this particular image, the main focal point of this image is the artist and the sculpture that he's working on. Then the other elements in the background are secondary. But right now, if you look at the lighting that's involved in this image, it's very flat. It's a very wash of light, but you want something that's a little bit stronger. You want to make the image a tiny bit stronger. So if I take a brush, make a really big brush now, and this time I want to have a soft edge brush. So I want my hardness to 0. So I have a big soft edge brush. My opacity on my brush, I usually keep it around 20% or 10%. Depends on what I'm working on, but a lot of times anywhere between 10 and 20% is good because you want to do it in layers. It's less noticeable when you do things in layers. And for this particular image, I want to keep my right burn and dodge on the right side of my image and my left burning and dodging on the left side of the image. So if I mess up, Command or Control Z works wonderful. But if we go in here and we just darken this a little bit, I want to darken around the edge. I'm constantly making the brush larger and smaller, but I'm just trying to aim the focus of the viewer's eye in towards the central subject. Okay, so I'm just brushing along here. Now I want to make it, if I want to make the sculpture look a little bit more rounded, I'm going to darken some of his hair, which would enhance the shape of the sculpture. I can also add a little bit of a shadow to his clothes to enhance the roundness of his clothes. The bottom of his bench is not important, so it can be darkened. Now, if I turn on and off the burn and dodge layer, you'll see the difference that's been created. If you didn't see the before and after, you wouldn't notice. But by looking at by turning it on and off, you actually do see the difference. So that's our right side. Now, if I go to our left side and do the same thing, and this time maybe darken up the ceiling, because the ceiling's not an important part of the element of the composition. In fact, I want to draw people away from looking at the ceiling. So if I'm darkening this, well, right now I'm working around his other two pieces, just because I want to keep other elements in the picture that shows what he does, what other types of art that he does. So if I turn the left one on and off, you'll see we made a few mistakes. The great thing about, using Photoshop is you can undo everything. There's 100 different ways to burn and dodge in Photoshop. This is just one that I've been doing for about 20 years. It's simple. It takes very little effort. And if I look at it and say, oh, well, I went a little too far, well, you just change the opacity of that layer, and it now looks a little less obvious. I can then select the right and the left burn and dodge layer, and I can drag it into my right image. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to view both images together. So I'm going to go to Window, Arrange. You can do tile vertically or 2 up vertical. So I've got my left image on the left, and there's my left target point. I have my right image on the right, and you'll see the difference in my target point is way off. So I'm going to take my left target point, and I'm going to align it with the dot, the same that's on too far. I'm going to align it with the same basic area as my left target point. And I'm going to do the same thing with the right. There's our right target, and you'll see that my right target point really isn't all that far off. So I'm not a very technical person when it comes to stereo work. I haven't been doing it that long. I just know what works for me. So at this point, once you have your target points and you have your images aligned, you're going to go to, you're going to have to erase your target point, or else you end up seeing it in your picture. At that point, you're going to take the brush tool and you're going to set your brush to a medium gray. Okay, and then we're going to set the opacity to 100%. I think my brush is kind of big, so let's make it smaller. Set it to 100%. And I'm going to erase my 2 target points. Then I'm going to shift over to my left target. And do the same thing. So we change to our left layer. We erase our target point. We go to our right image. Okay, cut our right image. Nope, sorry, our left target point. It gets confusing after a while. And you erase your left and right target points. Photography is supposed to be fun, and my website says having fun with photography. I don't want to spend a lot of time in Photoshop. I want to spend more time creating images, compelling images that the viewer sees, more than I want to create work in Photoshop. So that simple technique only took a matter of a few minutes to do. Now, if I was to select my left image and turn off my left and right, you'd see the before and after. We do the same thing over here. We do the before and after. There is a difference, and it's a little bit more compelling. It's a little more interesting when you're able to focus the attention where you want the viewer to go. And by darkening certain elements and lightening certain elements, you've done that. In this particular picture, if I used a white brush at a low opacity, it would lighten something. A black brush darkens, a white brush lightens. But in this case, I didn't have anything that I really wanted to lighten. But that's how you would do either white or black. Now, if I turned off my background image, you can see all the little marks that I made. Okay, and that gives you an idea of how simple it is. Now, if you notice on the right image, you'll see that the gray line over there on the left-hand side is because I moved that left target way over to one side. So I would then take the rectangle marquee tool, draw a selection around that area, Command or Control T to transform it. And I'm going to drag and transform my burn and dodge layer out to the edge to get rid of that little tiny mark that was on that side. So by turning off your images on both left and right image, you can see the difference and where the edge falls into place. Now, a more advanced technique, which we don't have time for, but I wanted to share with you anyway, is a different way of selecting your subject. Now, I spent an hour just about on each image selecting certain elements of my subject. In order to save time, I made selections and I saved the selections. But I did this to both images. If I turn off my burn and dodge layer and turn that on, with a little bit of work and a little bit of exercise, I was able to turn it totally different. Now, to me, this looks a little bit better. The image on the left is stronger than the image on the right. What I did, if I expand my folder, you'll see that I made a selection and refined it for the sculpture, for the ceiling, for the right edge of the image, and for the subject and for the background. And I painstakingly went in and made lots of different selections and preserved them to keep them on the right track, just to share with you. But this is another way of burning and dodging that is more effective. After you do that, you would then do a save as, so you have a new document. You would then, I usually put them right back into Photoshop. I mean, put them right back into Lightroom. You could then export the pictures out of Lightroom and put them back into Stereo Photo Maker and make your stereo pairs. Or your anaglyphs. I happen to work with cards. Majority of my work are with stereo cards because I happen to like that format, and I'm not one for projecting my images and stuff. So I know that my work is only about 7 inches wide. So I'm not dealing with big images. So you don't have to spend hours painstakingly burning and dodging, but there is a difference, and it really helps with a little bit of burning and dodging. So I wanted to show you a series of before and after pictures. to give you some idea. So let's hide all my information, darken my screen. Let's make it a hair bigger. And this just gives you an idea. Let's see. Well, it doesn't want to find the little hook. Oh, there we go. Make it a little bit bigger. So this is a before and after with basic burning and dodging. This is a before and after with the more advanced burning and dodging. To me, the more compelling image is on the bottom because my attention is drawn right to the sculptor and to his two pieces, adding 3 elements into the same photograph. So the difference here is I looked at this and I said, well, you know, that white, the easel with the white piece on it was a little distracting and it took the viewer's eye away from our sculptor. So I cropped it. And I think this turned out a little bit better. This is a part of a series that I did. Both of these were part of a series that I did. And I did a gallery show back in 2020 called 2020 Vision, focusing on 3-dimensional art. And it happened in October of last year. And I had a little over 300 people exposed to stereo photography that hadn't been exposed to before. So this is some before and after images. I also use whatever tools are available. This is this is focus stacking. And I did very subtle burning and dodging here. It's not a lot, it's just a little. You don't have to go overboard if you don't want. You can just make subtle differences. Here I felt the background was a little too sharp and it was a little too bright. So I went in and just darkened the background and I shaped the leaves a little bit. This particular image is done with a microscope, a USB microscope that I plugged it in. And there's 160 images on the left, 160 images on the right. They were focus stacked together, put into Stereo Photo Maker aligned, taken back out of Stereo Photo Maker, put into Photoshop, burned and dodged, and then back and forth. So it takes time. Simple things like leaves. If you take a picture of a bunch of leaves on a plant, you want to draw attention to a certain leaf, darken your edges. In this one, the bonsai tree, the background and the foreground had the same density to them. So I wanted to make the tree stand out more. So all I did was a very simple darkening of the edges around it. I worked in infrared too. The pedestal had a bright spot on it. So I retouched it out, darkened my edges to draw attention to the tree, not to the surrounding areas. Simple things. This had very simple, it's subtle and it's very simple, but the trees in the background, I darkened a little bit to give each tree shape. These guys here, I just wanted to darken the grass. The sky was a solid white, so I wanted to just give a little color back there. And in looking at the grass is variegated. So no one's going to know that you've burned and dodged the grass because everybody, you know, not all grass is a perfect shape. Sometimes cropping makes a difference. So you would take this image at the top and say, all right, well, let's burn in our corners, darken them a little bit, but then crop out the rocks. The distracting part is not necessary. The path is the focus point here. So why not darken the edges of the path on both sides? You're drawn to the lightest part of the image, which is the path that draws you in. Okay, this one here, I just darkened the whole background. I selected the car, made an adjustment layer, selected the background, and just darkened the background a little bit to enhance the car. This one here, all I did was in Lightroom, I took the sliders for all the other colors except for blue, and I pulled them down. So all that I had in color was the blue truck, and it makes a more compelling image. I lightened the background a little bit and enhanced that. This one here, the sky was boring, so I added a new sky. I darkened all the paths, lightened the rocks. It only took a few minutes to do each one. It doesn't take a lot of work. It's just time consuming a little bit. This one here, when I took the image, I knew I had to give him something to hold on to. So I stuck that ball in there, and to match the color emanating from the ball, I had to shift the color to a more yellow color so it looks more realistic. I also darkened around his face to give a direction that the light was coming from. Since the light was coming from the ball, I could darken his left side of his face to show that it was behind him a little bit. Something simple like taking a simple thing on the background and adding a few elements. Okay, I did this for the pastor at my church, and I just wanted to give the Ark of the Covenant a glow, a godly glow to it. So all I did was add in a starburst to it. And I enhanced it by darkening the background. I selectively made certain things lighter and darker. And then this last one is from my my photography collection. And I wanted this guy to stand out because the background, the tonality of the background and the tonality of the subject were the same. So by darkening the background, I've now made the sculpture a little bit more noticeable. Okay. So that's that. Now it's time for questions. We probably have a minute left if I didn't go over. So let me turn this off. I can stop sharing. Move this over here. And we can find out if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, actually, what was the point of the target points? I didn't understand what the target points were used for.
Okay, the purpose of the target point is to align your left and your left image and your right image. I'm getting a lot of echo. If you don't have a target point, when you move your burn and dodge layer from your left image to your right image, then you'll have too much overlap in certain areas and it won't be precise enough. Now, some images require 2 target points. Some images only require 1. A lot of the images that I showed only had 1 target point in it, but it helped me to align to know exactly where my burning and dodging was, because if I was working around a particular object like the easel and the art on the easel or the pedestal, if I didn't have a target point, then the shadow would overlap into my burning would overlap into that sculpture piece, and I would have uneven lighting on. So that's the purpose of the target point. Anybody else?
Yeah, what type of images give you the most trouble?
Well, I just avoid them. They're all fun. You know, I've been doing Photoshop for a long time, and I've tried them all. I mean, I've done the macro photography, I've done flowers, I've done people, I've done landscapes. Not as much landscapes. I find that most of my images are more close-up, because the one thing that I like to have in my photographs is a foreground, midground, and background. If my images don't have the 3 elements to it, then I don't work on it. If I have an image, a stereo image, and it doesn't have a strong foreground, midground, and background elements, I just don't work on it. Anyone else? It's quiet out there. Nobody liked it. Did everybody leave? I don't hear anything. Let's see, is there anything in the chat?
Are we? I have a question.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I'm glad that you've been inspired and that you're teaching here, because it was a surprise and it's wonderful. And I'm glad you became a stereo photographer. And everybody, he's a great projectionist of 3D as well.
Thanks, Lynn. Now, I can tell you the truth that I went to the Palm Beach Photographic Center for the photography festival way back in, I think, 2007 or 2008. And Lynn was doing a program on stereo photography at that program. And I said, I want to try that. That looks like fun.
And
So
you
she
luckily
really
got a W3 or a W.
Yep. I bought a W3 and I started playing, but I have a W3. I have a USB microscope. I have a infrared camera that I have Cha-Cha. I have stereo paired cameras. I work with my Canon 5D Mark III. So I use all the tools that are available to me to create the art that I want to create.
That's great. That's really great.
Jim, I wanted to ask about the 50% gray.
Okay.
What would you, what if it was 75% gray, or what if it was 25% gray? What's the
Okay,
significance of the 50?
Okay, 50% gray is neutral. If it was 75% gray, then your image would be that part of the whole image would be darker. If it was 25% gray, the image would be lighter. 50% is smack dab in the middle. It's by the numbers, it's like 117, 117, 117. It's a neutral tone. So the neutral doesn't show. So when you're adding a black brush to it, it's darkening it, white brush is lightening it. The neutral gray at 50% gray doesn't show anything. So it doesn't show any change in your image.
Okay, so even if you combine those two 50% gray areas, it still doesn't.
It's right. It still keeps it at 50% gray because each one is at 50% gray.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Now I do, I do a lot of different techniques. There just isn't a whole lot of time. I am available for workshops and things like that. I do Zoom workshops. I do a lot of other types of workshops. I'm also a juror, so I have judged lots of photography competitions. I just, 2 months ago, I just judged 1,438 images for the Florida Camera Club Council. So I do a whole lot of judging. And the one thing that if you ever get a chance to look on my website, the link on my website is on the in the art gallery spot. If you look at it, the tagline on my website is having fun with photography. I have been creating images for 50 years and having fun all 50 of those years. And it doesn't matter whether I'm doing weddings and bar mitzvahs or families and kids and pets and animals. I'm retired from that now, but I'm still having fun and I create images as often as I can. And I'm inspired by everything that's around me. And I was watching the 3D thing before this program, and there was some cool stuff with movies. I don't do movies. I don't do that kind of thing, but some people had some really creative stuff. And the one guy said he was having fun. The guy was making a monster video. And I was like, but he said he had fun. So, hey, all the power to him because he was having fun, and we need to have fun with what we do. And I don't, everybody everybody is scared of Photoshop. And you don't have to be scared of Photoshop because what I do is simple. The techniques that I've been doing with the burning and dodging, I've been doing since Photoshop 2.5. And it's the same technique, I do some other advanced techniques, but it's still the same technique. And if you try it, you'll like it. And if you just do a little bit of burning and dodging, Ansel Adams was one of the early people of burning and dodging. People have been doing darkroom techniques for over 100 years. So why not take that into the digital world and do the same techniques that you do for film that you do for digital to help enhance and pull the eye towards what you want to show the viewer. It's important to have the focus where you want it. You wanted to draw the viewer in a direction that you want. If I didn't show the one picture, but there's a picture of a path. So I had a path with a whole bunch of series of trees in the background. Well, I lightened and darkened some of the trees, and I lightened the path so that the viewer enters the photograph, goes through the path, goes over the bridge, and notices the trees in the background. And every other tree is either lighter or darker, depending on what's there, but it helps to enhance the image. And when I took the picture, it was a gray day with flat lighting. So you can always change your lighting with just a little bit of burning and dodging. Anybody else?
I think Michael had a question. Michael?
Excuse me. I was just thinking, you say about enjoying yourself, and I always found Photoshop a lot of learning, and I've had it, but I've let it go for some time. And I use Luminar, and I found that to be a great program to enable me to do exactly what you're doing, but I do it on an SBS on the screen together and get the brush and go in various places. You can see it. You can do both sides at the same time. I'm lazy. I don't want to do it twice and copy things backwards and forwards. And that does a pretty good job. So you can do most things there in Luminar, and you pay once and you get it, which is a pretty good deal. I don't know whether you've tried it.
Yeah, I have Luminar too. So Luminar is a great program. There's lots of different programs, and a lot of them, as long as it allows you to do a layer, to create a blank layer and to change the blend mode, you can use any of the programs. The reason why I drag my burn and dodge layer from the left to the right, because if I'm doing a brush opacity of a 20%, if I do 3 or 4 strokes on the left image and do 4 or 5 strokes on the right image, then your right image is going to be darker than your left image.
Indeed, you have to be careful of that. You're quite right. It overlays.
I used to do that. I used to have them side by side. But then I was noticing, when I first contacted Rick about doing a program, he looked at my website and he pointed out a few errors. He said, well, yeah, I missed this picture and this one has a little darker. So I miss things too, but so I enjoy somebody critiquing my work and finding things. And so Rick pointed out about 4 or 5 images on my site that I had to fix. So I went ahead and I fixed them, because sometimes you don't see them. Sometimes you get so involved in an image, you get so invested in the image that you miss something. And by having some fresh eyes look at it, they'll see the things that you missed.
Yes, I agree. You can overdo it by brushing more than once. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. So I see that that Rick put my website in the chat. It's jimswallow.com. If anybody's interested in doing a workshop, this kind of thing, my email is very simple. It's jim@jimswallow.com. And I'd be glad to talk to anybody. I've done regular photography and Photoshop programs for camera clubs around Florida, but not really traveling around. But in Zoom, I can do things anywhere nowadays.
Thank you very much, Jim. That was excellent. We've run out of time. We all especially liked all those examples you showed at the end, because it gives you obvious reasons why this works to make pictures better. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for having me. It was fun. I need to do a screen grab of everybody that's looking at the camera here. Let's do a screen grab. I do things on a Mac, and I use Parallels to run my stereo photo maker.
Okay, I think we'll see everybody in the next event is the SIG on social media by Gordon. So that's our next event. That starts at 5. You're going to have to leave this and go back to the other event. Rick, you got any more you need to add? I'm going to mute right now and get in a phone call.
No, we're good.
I'm gonna add I'll add a plug for GatherTown. So if either of the presenters are around, they can go to GatherTown, and if you guys want to have further conversations, or if anyone else just wants to stop in and see who's in our GatherTown link, you can go to the main page and converse with other attendees on the conference room floor. Also stop by the trade fair, either on the website or GatherTown, and there's also the art gallery and the competitions tab. So check that stuff out too.
And there's jazz in the speakeasy.
Also true. Thanks, everyone.